tax refund sitting there, ready to spend. But when you look for your federal refund, there's nothing but crickets. The IRS website shows processing, delayed or worse, under review. You're not alone in this frustrating situation, and what's happening behind the scenes might shock you. Before we dive deep into why the IRS is playing games with your money while your state already paid up, smash that subscribe button and drop a comment telling us how long you've been waiting for your federal refund. Your story might help someone else realize they're not going crazy. The reality is that tens of millions of Americans face this exact scenario every single tax season, and 2025 has been particularly brutal. State governments have been processing refunds at record speeds, some within just 2 weeks of filing, while the IRS continues to sit on federal refunds for months on end. This isn't just bureaucratic slowness. There are specific, deliberate reasons why your state refund sailed through while your federal money is locked in IRS limbo. Understanding these reasons isn't just about satisfying your curiosity. It's about knowing your rights, protecting your money, and potentially taking action to speed up the process. The gap between state and federal refund processing has never been wider. Recent data from the Treasury Department shows that while most states are issuing refunds within 15 to 21 days, the IRS is averaging 45 to 60 days for basic returns, and that's for the lucky ones. Complex returns, amended returns, or anything flagged for additional review can stretch into 6 months or longer. The backlog from previous years hasn't been fully cleared, and new verification systems implemented in 2024 and 2025 have created additional bottlenecks that affect millions of taxpayers who did absolutely nothing wrong. Your state tax agency operates with completely different systems, priorities, and legal requirements than the IRS. State tax departments are typically smaller, more nimble, and focused exclusively on state tax law, which is considerably simpler than the federal tax code. They process fewer returns, have more streamlined verification procedures, and in many cases, have modernized their technology infrastructure more recently than the federal government. When you file your state return, you're dealing with an agency that might process a few million returns in a year. The IRS, on the other hand, handles over 150 million individual returns annually, plus business returns, amended returns, and countless other forms. The technological divide between state and federal tax processing is staggering. Many state revenue departments upgraded their systems within the last 5 to 10 years, implementing modern fraud detection that can instantly verify most returns without human intervention. The IRS is still running on core systems that date back to the 1960s and 70s in some cases. Yes, you read that correctly. Some of the fundamental programming that processes your federal tax return was written when moon landings were headline news. While the IRS has layered modern interfaces on top of these ancient systems, the core processing still runs through infrastructure that would be considered museum pieces in any other context. This technological gap creates real consequences for your refund timeline. State systems can automatically cross-reference your W-2 information, verify your identity, check for fraud markers, and issue your refund without any human ever looking at your return. The IRS system requires multiple touchpoints, manual reviews for anything outside standard parameters, and verification steps that simply take time even when everything is correct. If your federal return includes any credits like the Earned Income Tax Credit or additional child tax credit, you're automatically placed in a slower processing queue by law. The PATH Act requires the IRS to hold refunds with these credits until mid-February at the earliest, even if you filed in January. The fraud prevention measures at the federal level are exponentially more complex than state requirements. The IRS lost billions of dollars to fraudulent refunds in the early 2010s, leading to massive criticism from Congress and the public. In response, the agency implemented layer upon layer of verification systems designed to catch fraud before refunds go out. These systems are extremely sensitive and flag returns for manual review based on hundreds of different triggers. Your return might get flagged because you moved states, changed jobs, had a significant income change, claimed a new dependent, reported self-employment income, or dozens of other completely legitimate reasons that simply don't match the IRS's pattern expectations. State tax agencies face fraud too, but the dollar amounts are smaller and the political pressure is different. A state might lose millions to fraud. The IRS could lose billions. The scale of the problem means the IRS implements verification procedures that state agencies would consider overkill. Every additional verification step adds processing time, When your return gets pulled for manual review, it joins a queue with millions of other returns, waiting for an actual, human, IRS employee to examine the details. The IRS has been chronically understaffed for years. Budget cuts have reduced the workforce even as the number of returns and complexity of tax law have increased. The agency has fewer staff to process more returns with more complicated rules than ever before. Your state refund approval doesn't mean your federal return is wrong or suspicious. The two agencies are verifying completely different things. Your state is primarily concerned with state income, state withholding, and state-specific credits or deductions. Your federal return includes all your nationwide income, federal withholding, social security numbers for dependents, complex credits like education credits or retirement savings contributions, and interconnections with other federal programs. The IRS cross-references your return against W-2s and 1099s submitted by employers and financial institutions, social security records for dependents, prior year tax returns, and databases from other federal agencies. This cross-referencing takes time, especially when there are discrepancies. If your employer submitted your W-2 late or with errors, your return might be held while the IRS sorts out the mismatch. If you claimed a dependent that was also claimed on another return, intentionally or accidentally, your refund will be frozen while the IRS investigates who has the legal right to claim that person. If you reported self-employment income without corresponding 1099 forms showing that income, the IRS might want additional documentation. None of these issues would necessarily affect your state refund because your state might not be checking those specific details or might have already received confirmation that your state numbers are correct. The timing of when documents reach the IRS versus your state creates another layer of delay. Employers and financial institutions are required to submit W-2s and 1099s to the IRS by late January for the previous tax year. However, the IRS doesn't receive all these documents immediately, and processing them into searchable databases takes additional weeks. If you file your return in early February, the IRS might not have received or processed the W-2 your employer sent. Your state, which might only need confirmation of state wages and withholding, could verify your return much faster because it's checking less information. The federal system waits until it has complete information before releasing refunds, while state systems might release refunds with partial verification if fraud markers aren't present. Recent changes to IRS verification procedures in 2024 and 2025 have added significant processing time for many taxpayers. The agency implemented enhanced identity verification requirements that flag returns when certain patterns appear. If you filed from a different location than previous years, used a different bank account for your refund, had a significant change in filing status, or showed income patterns that differ from recent history, your return might require additional identity confirmation. This could mean waiting for a letter from the IRS asking you to verify your identity through their online system or by phone. The identity verification process itself can add 4 to 6 weeks to your refund timeline, even though you've done nothing wrong. The IRS is also dealing with the aftermath of pandemic-era changes to tax law. Programs like the expanded child tax credit, stimulus payments, and recovery rebate credits created millions of returns that needed special handling. Even though some of these programs have ended, the IRS is still processing amended returns and corrections related to these credits. The agency's resources are stretched thin dealing with current year returns while simultaneously working through backlogs from 2020, 2021, and 2022. Your 2024 federal return might be sitting in a queue behind returns from previous years that are still being processed. State tax agencies didn't face the same pandemic backlog issues because they weren't administering federal relief programs. Your state was focused exclusively on state tax obligations, which remained relatively stable through the pandemic years. The federal government took on massive additional responsibilities during the crisis, and the IRS bore much of the administrative burden. The agency is still recovering from that workload surge, while Congress hasn't provided the additional funding or staffing that would be needed to clear the backlog quickly. Career IRS employees are working overtime, but there's only so much that can be done with limited resources and outdated technology. Your federal refund might also be held because of debts you owe to other government agencies. The Treasury Offset Program allows the federal government to intercept tax refunds to pay outstanding debts like unpaid federal taxes from previous years, defaulted student loans, unpaid child support, or state income tax debts that have been certified to the federal government. Your state refund wouldn't be subject to federal offset programs in most cases, so it comes through clean, while your federal refund gets partially or entirely redirected to pay these debts. The IRS doesn't control this process. It's managed by the Bureau of the Fiscal Service, and the offset happens automatically when debts are registered in the system. If your refund is being offset, you should receive a notice explaining what debt was paid and which agency received the money. However, these notices can take weeks to arrive, leaving you in the dark about why your refund hasn't shown up. The offset process adds processing time because the IRS has to coordinate with other agencies, verify the debt amounts, calculate the offset, potentially split refunds between debt payment and remaining refund to you, and update multiple systems to reflect the transaction. Your state refund isn't subject to these federal coordination requirements, so it processes independently and faster. Mathematical errors on your return create another common reason for federal delays that don't affect state refunds. The IRS checks every calculation on your return. If agents find an error in your math, income reporting, or credit calculations, they will correct it before issuing your refund. This correction process requires manual review and adjustment of your return. The IRS will send you a notice explaining the change, but processing this correction adds weeks to your refund timeline. Your state might have caught a different error or no error at all, allowing your state refund to process normally while your federal refund waits for mathematical correction. Amended returns create massive delays at the federal level compared to state processing. If you need to amend your federal return after filing, you're looking at a processing time of 4 to 6 months minimum, and potentially longer if there are complications. States typically process amended returns much faster because they're verifying less information and dealing with smaller volumes. If you amended your federal return but not your state return, or vice versa, you'll see dramatic differences in processing speed. The IRS manually processes every single amended return. There is no electronic fast track for amendments, no matter how simple the change might be. The appeals and examination process at the federal level dwarfs anything that happens at the state level. If the IRS selects your return for examination or audit, your refund is frozen until the examination is complete. This could take months or even years depending on the complexity of the issues being examined. State audits happen too, but they're far less common and usually resolve faster because state tax law is simpler and the dollar amounts in question are smaller. A federal audit can examine multiple years of returns, request extensive documentation, and involve complex legal questions that take time to resolve. Your federal refund might be delayed because you claimed credits that require additional verification time by law. The Earned Income Tax Credit and Additional Child Tax Credit are held until mid-February at the earliest under the PATH Act, which was designed to give the IRS more time to verify these returns before issuing refunds. These credits have high fraud rates, so Congress required the delay to allow the IRS time to confirm that claims are legitimate. Even if everything on your return is completely accurate, the law requires the IRS to hold your refund if these credits are claimed. Your state has no equivalent to the PATH Act, so your state refund process is on the normal timeline. International income reporting creates another federal complexity that doesn't affect most state returns. If you have foreign bank accounts, foreign income, or foreign tax credits, your federal return requires additional verification that can significantly delay your refund. The IRS must coordinate with other countries through tax treaties, verify foreign tax payments, and ensure compliance with international reporting requirements. These verification steps don't exist at the state level, where the focus is purely on domestic state income and taxes. The bankruptcy court system can freeze federal refunds while having no effect on state refunds. If you filed for bankruptcy, your federal tax refund might be considered part of the bankruptcy estate and held while the court determines how it should be distributed among creditors. This legal process happens entirely outside the IRS's control and can add months to your refund timeline. Your state refund might not be subject to the same bankruptcy estate rules depending on your state's laws, allowing it to be issued normally while your federal refund remains frozen. Prisoners and individuals in certain federal custody situations have their federal refunds subject to additional verification and potential holds. The IRS has procedures to prevent fraud involving incarcerated individuals, and these procedures can delay legitimate refunds. State agencies might not have equivalent systems or might process these returns differently, leading to situations where state refunds arrive while federal refunds remain held for verification. The good news is that you have options to check your refund status and potentially resolve issues. The IRS. Where's My Refund tool updates once daily and provides the most current information available about your federal refund. If the tool shows that your return is being reviewed or that the IRS needs more information, you should watch for letters from the IRS explaining what they need. Responding quickly to IRS requests with complete documentation can prevent further delays. If your refund has been significantly delayed beyond normal processing times, you can contact the IRS directly, though phone wait times are often measured in hours, not minutes. Understanding why your state refund arrived while your federal refund remains delayed helps set realistic expectations and reduces anxiety about the situation. In most cases, the delay doesn't indicate a problem with your return or any action you need to take. The IRS is simply working through its massive workload with limited resources and outdated systems. Your refund will eventually arrive. Checking the Where's My Refund tool regularly, responding promptly to any IRS correspondence, and keeping records of your return and all supporting documents will help ensure that your refund processes as smoothly as possible. If you found this information helpful, hit that subscribe button and share this video with anyone else who's waiting on their federal refund while their state money already came through. Your comments and shares help us reach more people who need this information during the stressful tax season.